About now, you're probably wondering why I own a gondola, but we are not going to get distracted with that right now. Instead, this video is all about comparing the Apple Watch with the Garmin watch from a skiing or snowboarding standpoint. In this video, I'm going to dive through all the features of both of these two platforms and how they compare. And to do that, I've had the Apple Watch on one wrist and the Garmin watch on the other wrist over the past week skiing here in Chamonix in the French Alps, putting these two things to the test side by side. This includes all the pieces that you're going to see on your watch while you're skiing, as well as all the pieces that you're going to see likely on your phone after you're done skiing. And what you'll find is super interesting here is how different these two experiences are, both on the watch side and then the afterwards app side of things. They are like complete polar opposites in both good and bad ways. Oh, and one last note, that both of these platforms and apps cover both skiing and snowboarding. For the purposes of like tech though, they're identical. They don't really care how you do that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about skiing since that's what I do. But again, from like a tech, tracking, etc. standpoint, it doesn't matter which particular boards you use to get down the hill. Now, starting off on the Apple Watch side of things, Apple actually doesn't have their own app for tracking your skiing and snowboarding runs. Instead, you need to use a third-party app. The good news is that a lot of those are actually free. In my case, I use the Slopes app to do all of my tracking. You can see it right here. That app has both a free version as well as a paid version. I start off with the free version and then use the paid version. When it comes to the actual tracking, there is no difference whatsoever. Now, once you've got the iOS app installed, then you want to validate that the Apple Watch app got automatically installed. It should get automatically installed, but just double check that before you head out onto the hill. There are a couple settings you can change though, including the units. For example, if you want it in metric, kilometers, for example, or statute, miles, or if you want that funky UK blend of the two of them, you can do that as well. You can also add your friends so you have live tracking of them, as well as link it up to platforms like Strava so that it goes ahead and pushes that afterwards to Strava. Once that's all set and done, you can find the Slopes app in the app list, and then you'll see whether it's skiing, snowboarding, etc. This is essentially the categorization that they do within that. There's also some settings at the bottom, very, very basic settings for basically just controlling, again, the unit type, as well as the auto lock feature. And the auto lock is super handy so that you don't have any issues with like your coach or something like that, doing funky things with the watch. So definitely enable the auto lock so you don't have to worry about it later on. Hey, just a quick note that if you are finding this video interesting or useful, if you're gonna hit the subscribe button, because I'm thinking if 1,000 people hit the subscribe button, I will tell you the story of the gondola. By the way, the gondola actually has totally functional doors. They open, they close. There's even a crazy latch system above the gondola as well. Again, that's a story to be told. 1,000 people on this video hit subscribe, I will tell you all the hilarity here. Now, the way all these apps work is that they automatically track those runs and then generally speaking do some form of pause while you're going up the chairlift. But just focus on the fact that it's tracking your runs automatically and that fact that you are on a run versus that you are on a chairlift. Nonetheless, you will see your stats in real time as you're skiing, but then as you get to the end of a run or on the chairlift, you can see the last run stats. So looking at the Apple Watch side of things, I'm on the gondola heading back up again. And in the case of the Slopes app, you've got the total stats shown, and as I iterate through with that digital crown, I'm going to see my last run stats. And this allows you again to see those stats. This is actually my kind of main complaint with this side of things, and you'll see why in a second with the Garmin watch when it comes to the on-watch experience, is that using the digital crown, especially with big gloves and probably ski poles attached on your wrist, it's just not a super awesome experience, and that's the only way to be able to see your per run stats. You can't customize any of the data fields or pages on the Slopes app like you better do on the Garmin side. Now, while the Slopes app on your watch is functional, the real magic is actually on the app afterwards on your phone in terms of analysis. And the very first thing you probably want to do is to create a trip if you're actually going on a trip. So in this case, I was on a trip last week in Chamonix, and so I created this trip profile that basically says these two date ranges in this resort. And then it's going to take all those stats and kind of combine them together. That way you can see your per trip stats. Of course, you can obviously just go skiing whenever you want and have those weekends show up like that. Like you can see for my Germany ski weekend right there. But it is pretty cool to be able to create these collections, whether it be for just a couple days or a longer trip, as well as to create the upcoming trips and see a countdown to that and the upcoming weather forecasted for that. You'll actually see the weather shown for the different resorts there. And in the app, it shows you what other people are reporting. I found that other people report basically every type of condition out there, like powder, groomed, ice, everything was reported every day. But because the bars are higher, you can see like the majority generally wins correctly. And that just comes down to like opinion. For me as a more more advanced skier, I wouldn't classify something very icy, whereas a more beginner skier would be like, that is a solid ice rink. Nonetheless, at the end of the day, you will see your stats for that particular day or for the week, as you can see right there. In my case, I was skiing each morning with adults, and then in the afternoon, I was skiing with my kids. So my stats are kind of lopsided. But what's really cool here is that I was skiing in a different resort in the morning, basically a bigger resort with more vertical. And in the afternoon, I was skiing with the kids in a much smaller resort. It actually combines those two together from a day standpoint. Despite the fact that they were totally separate recordings, it pulled them together. And you can see that on these screenshots, and that's a really nice, cool touch. Looking at one of the days though, up the top, it automatically pulls in all the photos from my photo album, or at least enumerates them anyway, so I can see those photos that are there for that particular time period, basically the time that I was skiing. And you can just swipe through both photos and videos. Down below that, you're going to see a map of your day, and it's going to show both the chairlift time as well as the skiing time. The skiing time is in red and the chairlift time is in black. And then you can tap into that and do like a 3D view and a 2D view. You can zoom around, augmented reality views, you name it, you can do it all there. And there's only a handful of things that are actually premium here, in particular overlaying the speed and where exactly you hit those speed points on the run. Everything else is free. It's pretty impressive. Scrolling on down, you can see any friends that you were skiing with. And what's interesting here is how it combines this. In this particular case, I actually didn't ski with her in the morning. She was at a different resort. And then in the afternoon, we combined together with our kids to ski. And again, this is only for friends that are in the Slopes app. You'll see your key stats, and of course, you can dive into per run stats if you want to by dragging that little slider along the bottom there. And as you scroll down, you'll go ahead and you'll see your general fitness and heart rate stats as well. I did keep seeing 0 calories for some of the stuff, which was a little bit peculiar to me, but I don't really worry too much about calories on the hill. I just know it's all going to work out, hopefully, at the end of the day. And then just as a comparison, here is my premium paid account, the 30 bucks or whatever it is a year. And then over here is my friend's account that is free. And you can see the stats are very, very close. There's not a lot of difference between the two of them. And then finally, there's also your lifetime as well as season stats, in addition to those per trip stats that I mentioned earlier on that you compare over time. In my case, I haven't been using the app that long, so I don't really have this big, cool database of historical stats to compare to. Okay, so now let's jump over to the Garmin watch side of things and note how different these two experiences are, both good and bad. Starting on the Garmin side of things, you're going to go ahead and access the ski app, basically from your sports listing. Which Garmin watches support the ski app versus don't generally aligns to whether or not that watch has a barometric altimeter. Though Garmin's more recent Forerunner 165 breaks that entire mold entirely. The simple answer is you're just going to have to look at your watch, scroll through all the sports. Remember to go through the add sports mode to add and try to find that ski mode. Assuming you do find it, you can select that ski mode, and then you'll likely see an auto run option listed there. Now, Garmin did change the way they do auto run last spring to basically include recording of your lift time as opposed to pausing it. That doesn't actually impact your stats too much at the end of the day. The change was mostly made to be able to include the recovery heart time. So if you were skiing super hard, you got right on the lift, then you wouldn't necessarily see that kind of high heart rate and drop off over time, and now you will. Still, the biggest difference you're going to see when it comes to Garmin versus Apple on the hill is the customization of the data pages and data fields. On the Garmin side, you can customize every data page you want, any data field you want, however you want, with as many metrics or as few metrics as you want from a per run or a total standpoint. Like, the world is your oyster there, just like any other Garmin sport profile and how much you want to customize things. Now, out on the hill in a default configuration, you're roughly divided up into your total stats for the day as well as your per run stats. And you can use the big buttons on the side of the watch to go ahead and just iterate through them pretty easily. The other thing that Garmin has is maps that are built in for ski resorts, assuming your watch has maps. Of course, not all Garmin watches have maps, but if your watch does have maps, the only thing is that these maps aren't really super practical. Yes, all the details there in the runs and lifts and stuff like that, but when it comes to actually using this, like with a finger with gloves, it's sort of the same problem you had with the data pages on the Apple Watch and the Slopes app. It's just not really very practical. You're more than likely, like me, just going to look at the big trail maps at the end of the chairlifts, or even on the chairlifts, the gondolas, etc., versus trying to navigate this slow-moving little map. But I appreciate it's there in case things go really wrong. I can at least maybe get myself out of that particular pickle. Now, at the end of the day, you have a summary on your watch, just like you would for any other Garmin activity. And then you have the summary in Garmin Connect. And this is probably the biggest difference you're going to see between this and the Slopes app, is that there's not a ton of information here. For example, there's no dedicated ski section in the Garmin Connect app. You're just going to sift through your activities till you find the activity you want. And then from there, you open it up and you can see the summary totals at the bottom of that page. You can click on the map. You can go ahead and see the classification of ski runs versus runs, and even do an overlay of the speed. That overlay of speed is something that would have cost extra on the Apple Watch side of things versus it's free here. But when you look at the rest of the stats, it's very basic stats. You'll see the run totals, but you can't do a lot of other detail into those totals. And you're going to see your overall grasp for the day, just like any other Garmin activity, whether it be a run or a ride or now a winter activity of some sort. It's all basically the exact same format. Now, here's what's really interesting is that the Slopes app can actually connect to the Garmin Connect platform. So if you saw all that cool slope stuff in the Apple Watch section, and if you skip that, you should go back and watch it, you can actually just connect your Garmin watch to that, use the Slopes app on your phone, but use all the data from your Garmin watch. It's literally the best of both worlds because you get all the customization and flexibility of the watch side of things while you're skiing, yet all the data that you would on the phone side of things after the fact while you're, après skiing. So that'd be my general recommendation there. Overall, these are two very different experiences, but they both work perfectly fine. In the case of my wife, she was using the Garmin watch and the default stuff without any slope stuff at all. That worked great. In the case of our friend, she was using the Apple Watch and the free Slopes app, and that also worked great. Everyone was happy. Everyone saw the same stats. It was impressive how close these stats were on most days, sometimes within just a meter or two for the total vertical descent, which is mind-boggling. I had both watches on my wrist at all times, and so to have them be that close is very, very impressive. Anyways, it was super interesting to me to see that in the cases where the Slopes app was the best, like the app, Garmin wasn't so great on the app side of things, and then inversely, in cases where the Slopes app was not so best, the watch side of things, Garmin was the best. Like it was a complete opposite. They just both complement each other super well. Anyways, hope you found this interesting or useful. If so, go ahead and give it a like at the bottom or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. Have a good one.